Well, welcome back to another video ahead of the coaching symposium with Matt Bradbury Sports in July. Delighted to say again that we've been joined by Lee Waters, who we spoke before about his eye tracking. Now, Lee, you're doing some elite performance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looking at the psychological processes people go through to improve their performance.
Yeah, and Matt, we know how important that is within the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bringing Lee to do a second session about performance psychology, it just makes sense because he's a specialist in the areas that he works in, and it will just be a real insight for the coaches attending the symposium as to how they can not necessarily follow exactly what Lee's saying, but just gives a lot of food for thought and that part of just that growth mindset.
It shows how many different avenues there are within the sport. Of the ones we've spoken about so far, about how to develop players. I know we're going to be talking about injury prevention, all that sort of thing. And sports psychology seems to have come very much into the forefront in the last few years. So I suppose with performance psychology, it's very much kind of a similar sort of thing. Is it, Lee, getting players into that right mindset?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the great thing about this symposium is that it is really addressing the fact that sport is very holistic. There's so many factors to play, whether it be injury prevention, whether it be the coming up with schedules for programs, training implementation, that kind of thing, strength and conditioning, speed sessions. From my perspective, one of the things that is still not as consistently used or used effectively is the psychology, the cognitive processes behind performance. A lot of that is typically, in my opinion, because people don't necessarily understand it as well. But it is definitely, as you say, coming a lot more to the fore, and people are recognizing it a hell of a lot more with mental health, things like that. Really, really important. Communication, things like that are becoming really, really important.
Is it in terms of, I say, getting people into the right mental capacity to play well? We've known for years about you've got to eat the right way, and players and teams have been fueling for games in the right way, but you've got to get yourself into that mental, the correct mental capacity to perform at a high level. We've seen this year, of course, with the Nottingham Panthers, about how much they've needed that mental support as much as the physical support this season, because they can still skate perfectly well, play hockey to the right level, but even if you're at 95, 96% mentally, you're going to end up on the wrong side of the scoreline.
Unfortunately, that's the case. You can prepare as physically as you want to, and many people do. They go to the gym, they do their weight sessions, they do their speed sessions, they look after themselves, typically nutritionally. Not many people say that they dedicate a specific amount of time to mental preparation. Some people do it inadvertently. Some people listen to music preparing for games, or they will have certain rituals that people just simply don't understand. I used to compete with someone who, when he won a race, he wouldn't change his boxes. So he literally wouldn't change his boxes for those competitions. Obviously, he would change them in between competitions, but he wouldn't change them he wouldn't wash them. He would have them for the same until he lost the race, which it was just a superstition that he had. And that really, really helped him. He felt like he controlled the situation. One of the biggest things that's coming out is we need to be able to assist our athletes, our coaches, our officials to be self-regulating, so they can trust themselves. And it's trying to put a structure, a program, a process in place so they can go onto the ice, go onto the pitch, go into the arena, whichever sport it is, to trust themselves and back themselves in their situation. Because if they do, they feel a lot more confident, and they can do their thing in whatever arena they're in.
And Matt, it's so important, isn't it? Like, you as a coach of a team, or coach of a junior team, you might only see those players outside of a game for a couple of hours a week on the training session, but there's so much else going on in people's lives, whether you're coaching juniors and they're doing GCSEs, they've got all the exam stress, you've got all the other stresses that we all know from going through puberty and growing up and everything like that. And even then, when you get into the professional game, you know, these players are still paying mortgages and have got lives outside of the sport, and being able to kind of almost train your brain, isn't it, to perform at that right time and just give everything on the ice. It's an important factor.
Yeah, I'm sure coaches attending the symposium will be able to take away so much from Lee's psychology sessions. And obviously, you know, like you say, we don't see the players all the time because we're obviously in the non-professional status. There's so many coaches out there that will see their players once or maybe twice a week. But for me, it's being able to have that resource and those ideas and those probably guidelines, and then some ways that we can obviously have some add-ons for the coaches to support their players, so that you know, using myself, Lee, as a resource going forward, and ultimately, you know, giving the players a signpost somewhere they can actually go to, some reference, some point of reference. You know, if things are getting tough during a game, how do I react? What can I do? Instead of going off on the bench and beating myself up and getting down, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help the individual. It's not going to help the team, you know, and it's not going to help the performance and the end result. So again, lots of little things there that we can support coaches, players with, to help them to deal with situations on the ice.
Yeah, and it's almost like the language used as well, isn't it? It's easy when things aren't going right to go into the dressing room and start effing and jeffing and the voice is up and shouting, but that might not necessarily be the right way of, you know, motivating and communicating with your players, when, you know, some of them will feel they have given everything and it's still not working for them, and then the coach comes in and you know, gives them the hairdryer treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, there is a place for that. Some people may disagree with me, and that's the thing about this kind of stuff. In some ways, it's opinion. Do you have an evidence-based opinion? I would argue there is a place for that, but if you do that every week, every game, every training session, that's going to be a problem, because people are not necessarily going to be in the right frame of mind going back on the ice, that kind of thing. Because ultimately, we want people to be emotionally regulated so they can control as much as they possibly can their emotions, because as we start to get emotionally high, whether that be stressed, aroused, whatever, there may be a point where that really starts to affect our ability to see things, our ability to perform, our ability to be able to control the puck, all of this kind of stuff. So it really, really does affect it. So if you've just had a really heightened discussion in the changing rooms, they're then going back out onto the ice and they're heightened too. And for that first minute, 2 minutes, they potentially are not in the right frame of mind to be performing. So it's trying to get the right level and understanding players, coaches, and how they tick. Because as you say, some people that may work for, others that could be the worst thing possible for them. So it's understanding how to read the room.
Yeah, the last thing you want, Matt, is to lever into your team at, say, 2-0 down after the first period, then be in the wrong mindset and take a major penalty a couple of minutes into period 2, and then you concede another 2 on the power play, and the game's gone at 4-0. Whereas at 2-0, it's still all to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just sat here thinking now of those kind of interval breaks, the way that we're always very careful about the way that we pull together, you know, the feedback from the first period, and how we get the players up for the second period, and also giving them a bit of free time in that kind of 15-minute window when the ice is being resurfaced, pre-game as well. You know, they don't want the coaches around so much. Certain ages will do. So it's a kind of like a fine balance of how from the young players through to the senior players. So a lot of it is about timing, and I think that's something that I'm excited that kind of learning all the time, and I'm keen to have those further conversations with Lee, you know, over time, over the weekend, at the symposium. So that's just a great time when you can touch base as a coach and have those conversations. And I think that's one of the big key time is when you're going to be learning, is when it's that kind of coffee break time or that time in between some of the workshops, that you can just have a 5 minutes with a specialist in their area.
Yeah, and Matt, just finally, this symposium, 13th and 14th of July, it's getting ever closer now. You must be, getting to the point where you're kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's on just the final few finishing touches of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Still lots to, still a lot of time to go. Obviously, we're approaching the end of the season, so I'm sure coaches are now thinking about things that they're going to do in the summer. But we've tried to get the symposium at a time when it doesn't affect summer holidays, so the kids are still actually in school. So most people aren't away. It's the end of the season, missing out the EIH showcase event and other major events. So hopefully that will allow some of the coaches to spend the weekend with us in Nottingham, get away and sort of like hang out and network with coaches from across the UK as well as those specialists. But if people are interested, then they can visit on my website, which is www.mattbradburysports.com, and we're available across all the social media platforms. And yeah, if there's any queries, just get in touch. Anything people want to know, then information's on the website, or drop me an email.
Yeah, www.mattbradburysports.com, the place to go. And there is arguably no better city in the UK for hockey than Nottingham.
There's been a bit of hockey played over the years. Obviously, everybody could challenge that in their cities. I'm sure Sheffield will challenge that, but yeah, it's great to have some. It's great to have some rivalry and some competition, some good old competition in the world of ice hockey and sports. And we're proud of what we achieve here in Nottingham, and there's some great work going off around the country as well.
Yeah, Lee, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've got plenty on the rest of the day with chatting to other officials and tournaments over in Finland. So thanks for taking the time out to talk to us.
No worries at all. Yeah, it's exciting times here at the under 18s World Championships. It's really cool to see what we're finding out here, and ultimately helping our officials serve the game.
Yeah, and make sure you're following Matt Bradbury Sports on all social media, including TikTok. He does want to make sure that we put that into every single interview that we're doing. So make sure you look for Matt Bradbury Sports, especially on TikTok. But the Symposium, 13th and 14th of July, register on www.mattbradburysports.com.